Across the universe, so whisper wakes. Have you been listening for a wind of change? My ears are open, eyes aren't closed. I'm waiting for a miracle again. Have you been calling out my name? Oh. We're in a world taken by madness, sadness in a sea of stolen words, broken and shattered. What mattered means no more. In a time shaken by thunder, wonder is the seed of life forgone, crippling under. What happened to us all? We fade, pulled back into the shade. We fade, pulled back into the shade. Just fade away, melt into a memory. You can't save the day. If only you had tried. Just fade away, melt into a memory. You can't save the day. If only you had tried. Across the ocean blue, a wave will rise, consuming all who walk through day and night. My heart is beating with the drums. The breath is coursing through my lungs again. Or is it just a trick of time? We're in a world taken by madness, sadness in a sea of stolen words, broken and shattered. What mattered means no more. In a tide breaking the silence, violence is the wage of life forlorn, fighting for triumph. What happened to us all? Just fade away, melt into a memory. You can't save the day. If only you had tried. Just fade away, melt into a memory. You can't save the day. If only you had tried. We fade, pulled back into the shade. We fade, pulled back into the Across the universe, so whisper wakes. Have you been listening for a wind of change? My ears ears are open, eyes aren't closed. I'm waiting for a miracle again. Have you been calling out my name? Oh, we're in a world taken by madness, sadness in a sea of stolen words, broken and shattered. What mattered means no more. In a time shaken by thunder, wonder is the seed of life forgone, crippling under. What happened to us?
My intentions are innocent. Don't know if they're any good. Keep thinking that you haven't sent. Don't know why your love's so cruel.
Spending time on wistful mornings, wishing I could make things right. In the end we just keep falling into pieces, losing out on sleep at night. Is it too much to ask for fairy tales? Is it too blind to ask for fate? But baby, my intentions are innocent. Don't know if they're any good. Keep thinking that you haven't sent. Don't know why your love's so cruel. My intentions are innocent. Don't know if they're gonna change. Still want.
So let's try this out. Yes! Excellent. Okay. Wow. Of all the days, everyone, that I need to do an alternative routing situation, it's today. But hey, it works. Great to see everyone again. Thank you all for being here. My name is Claire. I also go by dolltr, but when I'm teaching with 343, I go by Claire. So hi. And thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to be sharing about some more push stuff with y'all. 343 Labs, we are a school that's based in New York and Berlin, and we do a lot of streams on 343 TV, but we also do lots of educational stuff. We have classes for Ableton Live, which is partially because we're an Ableton Certified Training Center that our stuff is so cool, or at least I think so. I hope you think so too. But we also have classes on Logic, and on specific techniques like songwriting or mixing or mastering. And we thank you all for being here. Synthesis, that's also a really great one that we have. So lots of different things that we teach related to electronic music production. But we also have 343 TV, which is our daily streaming show that I host the Monday show for. So welcome, especially if you're here for the first time, to Tips and Tricks, which is the show where we talk about Ableton Live and Push tips and tricks. So that's what we're all here for today. I'm just going to pop over into the chat and say hi to a couple of people. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Hey, John. Hey, Paul. Paul is one of our students. Hey, Paul. Jonathan. Hey, Howard. 343 Labs. Thomas behind the 343 Labs name. Yeah, thanks, Thomas, for running everything behind the scenes. And who else do we have? Samuel, hi, hello again, greetings. Who else do we have? Ryan, oh yay, Ryan reset, my dear friend. Nataz flies 215. Hi. Yeah, I do see a couple of questions about 1 versus 2, but let's see. Yeah. If you do have questions, everyone, we welcome the questions, but it's always a good idea to check if someone else has already asked it. So maybe I'll just start with that first question. Today, we're looking at push. Specifically, I'm going to talk about push 2. So some of the techniques may or may not apply to push 1. But you know what's a really great way to check even after this stream? It's to check out the Ableton reference manual because they have a really comprehensive guide about what works for push 1 and what works for push 2. So today, I'm going to speak more about push 2 since that's the one that is a little bit more up to date with some of the sampling functions that are really cool. So I'm going to be focusing on that. And if you have more questions, you can always throw them in the chat, or you can always check out the reference manual. If you've checked out my other streams before, you'll know I'm a big fan of the reference manual. Or if you've been a student of mine, you'll also know that I'm a big fan of the reference manual. I think sometimes we underestimate how valuable that can be. And I've mentioned this in a very serious manner to a lot of people. The Ableton reference manual, because it's for both live and for push, that's why it's called the Ableton reference manual, because it's from the company, right? Because we know that live is the software and push is the hardware. It's one of the friendliest manuals I've ever read, ever. And partially I think it is because in a way it's been written by musicians. It's not been written by just people who do the manufacturing. Oftentimes when like you get another kind of keyboard or another kind of controller, it's written from a very, very technical sort of perspective. But the reference manual from Ableton is really great. So would highly recommend that. But yeah, thanks everyone for popping by. I really appreciate it. Hi Andrew, hi Brett. Great to see both of you too. So yeah, let's speak a little bit about push. And specifically push 2, because that's what I have in front of me over here. I do like the original push though. I remember using it as well. But one thing that I do appreciate about the second version of push, which is the one that you see over here, is that the pads actually feel a lot nicer. So we're not going to be doing so much MIDI work today, but just as a quick recap, I spoke about this in my last stream. You can do lots of really great MIDI things with push. You can do things like drum programming over here, right? All about different drum sounds. You can do things like melodic stuff. If you've got some kind of, I think we had a Dorian scale over here. I think we were doing something last week involving a couple of interesting chord progressions and interesting melodies for melodic programming on push. So you can check out that stream from last week if you want to check that out. But today we're going to deal a little bit more with audio. So maybe I'll start off by creating a new audio track. And I can do that directly from push. You can do this by heading over to the top right of push. There is a button that says add track. So let's click on that. And now we should be able to see on push's LED screen a couple of options. And the great thing about push is that you have a certain set number of controls, but these controls will change their functions a little bit over time. So for example, I've got these knobs on the top and I want to create a new track. So I can use them now instead of say effects knobs, I can use them to scroll through different types of options to figure out what I want to add. So for example, let's add an audio track and let's make it a default track for now. Sure, why not? So let's load that up. And let's go ahead and see what we can do so far. Okay, cool. So let's take a second and we'll jog our memories a little bit. I'm going to play a scene from last week and let's take a listen to what we have so that we know where we can move forward this week. So here we go. Cool. So let's change some volumes and mix this. And I think we had some variation later on with like different types of chords. Here we go. Here's another one. Yeah. Cool. So we got all the things going on. What I want to do for the audio track now, though, is find maybe a sample of some sort from the library. And I might do this twice. So what I'm going to ask for in the YouTube chat, if you're hanging out with us on YouTube, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. I'm going to start with one loop. But if anyone wants to throw out an idea for another loop, like a sound, so maybe you want like a bass loop or a guitar loop or something like that, throw it out in the YouTube chat and we'll take a look at that. But I'm going to start off my sampling shenanigans with a... let's do What should we do? Yeah, let's do some kind of drum loop. Let's start off pretty simple. So I'm going to head over to my samples category in Live. And I'm just going to drag and drop a loop into this audio track. So we're not putting it into any sampler yet, but we're going to do it from Push itself. So let's look for some kind of drum loop. If I type in drum loop, let's see what we get. If I've labeled my stuff correctly, then I will be in good shape. And if I didn't, that's totally fine. I will find a loop eventually too. Let's see what we get. And we're also at a tempo of like 163. So we'll see what we can get. Ooh. That's actually very cool. It's not a drum per se, but it's like some extra stuff. I'm going to stick with this swishy loop. I think it could be interesting for us to play around with and add a couple of interesting textures through reusing the sample in an interesting way. So what I'm doing is I'm clicking on its name and I'm dragging and dropping it into the same scene as I had the rest of my active clips. So great, now I got that there. I'm going to go ahead and rename this. So let's call it loop. And what I'm going to do also is just make it a tiny bit narrower so that I can show you a little bit more of it without having it overlap with the other sections of Push over here. So great. We've got all of this pulled up now. And from Push, if I've got this clip selected and if I'm playing all of these different clips together, let's play them. You can hear that because of our tempo. That's a little crazy. Let me bring that down. Let me also bring my mic down a little. Great. Cool. So we've got this little strange part. It's pretty interesting, but it might be nice to manipulate it a little bit more. We can do a lot of interesting audio functions from Push. Like we can change the pitch of this, we can transpose it, we can warp this a little bit to a different rhythm. But let's go ahead and convert this. There's a button on Push that's called the convert button. Let's see what that does. Ooh, okay, cool. So now once I've done that, I have a couple of new options, several options pop up on the LED screen. I have convert, and then whatever the name of this drum loop is, to simpler, or drum pad, or harmony to MIDI, melody MIDI, and drums MIDI. So what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on the sampling stuff. So I'm not going to dive too deep into these other functions over here, although after simpler, we may do some drum rack stuff. So let's go ahead and click on this first option to put all of us on the same page. What we're going to do is do a quick recap of what sampling actually is. So when we talk about sampling, or maybe if anyone knows about sampling, you can tell me in the chat what you know of sampling, because there are tons and tons of definitions depending on what actually you are talking about. But when we speak about sampling as it pertains to taking a certain kind of audio and reworking it in that way, that's kind of what it is. We're taking a piece of audio and we are finding a different way to use it. So one really common context of sampling is, let's say, in hip hop. If you have a song that you would like to reuse and change the way it might be in a certain context, you can sample that song. And of course, there's an entire can of worms when it comes to sampling and copyrights and stuff like that, which we may or may not get into. If anyone has questions, you can let me know in the chat and maybe we'll get to it. But that's essentially what we're doing. We're taking an existing sound and finding a new way to use it. So simpler. Back to simpler. Simpler is the simple sampler in Ableton Live. There are two devices that are really great for sampling. In Live, one of them is simpler and the other is sampler. I like to think of simpler as the younger sibling of sampler. Because it's pretty straightforward too, but for most parts, especially if it's your first time sampling, I would strongly recommend using simpler. You can get some deeper functionality out of sampler, but if you're just starting out, simpler is where we want to be. So let's do simpler and let's see what happens. So I just clicked on simpler, might take a couple seconds. Ooh, now we have a new track that just popped up. Again, what I'm going to do is actually what I'll do is I'll shift these loops over so that you can see them a little more clearly. So I'll put them to the left of our other friends. Great. So the ones that we want to focus on are these orange ones over here. Great. So I've cut up my loop and now what do I have over here? Instead of having the loop in its own audio track, I now have it on a MIDI track. And now each time I play one of these notes, it's going to change the pitch of the loop that we're playing back. So this is the first step in a way of sampling. And let's also make sure we got that soloed. Great. So this was slower than the original thing that we had. Here's what I had, I believe. That's the original one. And that's very quick. Let me also just make that a little bit louder so that you can hear, because this one's a pretty soft sample, which is good. So here's our slowed down version. You can see that it's also moving slower across the sample in live. This is the one that we originally had in terms of the pitch. And then we've got the super high one that's kind of going a little crazy. So that's how we can kind of get started with sampling. You can put a loop into Simpler. Now, before I move forward, I want to also maybe speak a bit about Simpler. I spoke about this in one of my other streams too. So you can check one of those out if you want to dive a little more in. But when we're doing work with Simpler in live, we want to keep in mind that it has 3 different kinds of modes. You've got the classic mode, which is what we're currently in. And I can show you over here from the LED screen too. This top knob is going to control the mode. So classic mode is a mode where if you press a pad, that sample is going to play for as long as you're holding down that pad. And this is a part of the reason why I love doing this with Push too, because the LED screen gives you really good feedback. So if I press this and if I hold it down, I can see exactly where I am in the loop. If I go here, I can see that, okay, it's moving faster. But the moment I lift up my finger, the sample will stop playing. So it's going to take a pause, and I'll restart the next time I press another of these. But because of this, it ends up being a really interesting way of thinking of different rhythms and reorganizing your loop in a different sort of way. So that's classic. The other mode is one shot. Ooh, one shot, here we go. And one-shot mode is pretty good for other kinds of drums that aren't necessarily loops. Maybe they are one-shots, as the name implies. So usually when we think about audio, and in the context of live especially, there are 2 different kinds of things we want to work with. We want to work with loops. So if you have a loop in session view, and if it's in a clip slot, it's just going to loop every time you play that. It's going to go on and on and on. But if it's a one-shot, that means it's meant to be played once off. So maybe that might be something similar to what we had with our drums. When you have a kick drum and it's just going once, that's a one shot. Or if you have a crash cymbal, for example, and it's just going once, that's also a one shot. So it just plays once all the way through. So check out what happens if I'll play one of the higher notes, but I'll just touch and then I'll let go from my hand. Ooh, let's make sure we're in one shot. There we go. So I just pressed on it once and it kind of went all the way through on its own. Right. So that's pretty useful. Of course, when that comes into play, you want to check the start and the end of stuff. But there's one more mode that I want to talk about, and that is slicing mode. So what slicing mode does is, according to a certain type of algorithm that you prescribe as the producer to your Simpler, you're going to either cut up the loop by, say, the transients. So each of their high energy points, you can see over here, I've got these bunch of markers. You can also see them show up in live too. So now each of these pads, let me also turn on accent. Each of these pads is their own little thing now. So that can be pretty interesting. I often like using slicing mode with percussive stuff because you can get some very interesting reorganization of little fragments of rhythm. You could also try to slice according to beat. So let's say I want each of these to be like a quarter note division. So now I have 4 notes, not 4 notes, I have 16 over here. And that's because there are 16 quarter notes in a 4-bar unit, right? So that's why I have 4 of these at the moment. So you could do that too, but I think what I usually want to do is I'm going to put this on transient. It might be interesting to figure out some different things. So now that we've got that done, let's turn up the volume of this a little bit. And I would like to also work this a little bit more. There are several controls that you can use to fine-tune your slices a little bit. And you can do this on the other modes as well. But over here in live and also on push, let's use a bit more of push. So if I click over here on push, I can access a couple more controls for this particular Simpler. The way that I did that was I clicked on the Simpler's name on push. So remember what I mentioned just now about the different controls on push having different functions, this is an excellent example of that. The moment I press on this soft button, which is on top of the name Simpler, I go into a deeper menu with more options in Simpler that I can access from both Live and from Push. So if I head over here, I now have more of these smaller buttons that I can use to change different things. For example, I can control the transposition overall of this particular loop that I started with. I can shape the envelopes. I can change some of the warp modes, change a little bit of the filter maybe if I wanted to. So maybe make it a little more like squishy, more resonant. Cool. And then you can change an LFO assignment to it, panning as well. Oh, whoops, push. Just did a little strange freak out. That's okay. Great. So let's head back over here. And yeah, I think I would like to stick to that resonant thing. It might add some interesting percussive textures. And I think it might be nice to listen back again to the existing clips that we had. And we'll go ahead and maybe record in some kinds of sampled rhythms. So here we go. That's our loop. Cool. Let's do some simple stuff. Not too complicated. Push responding a little slow today. That's okay. So let's go ahead and put this into clip view. This is going to let me check out the exact length that I was using. And I'm also going to go ahead and quantize these. So I'm going to click on the quantize button over here on push. Let's crop this entire clip. So now we have a 4-bar loop of different kinds of interesting other rhythms maybe that I had, and it's not super complicated, but this is one thing I like to do with percussion loops to make them a little more interesting. For example, if you have a shaker, you can do this, and I might do this later just to illustrate this for everyone, but let's take a listen. So now we've kind of like repurposed our loop. Interesting textures between the left and the right ear if anyone's using headphones. Cool. So that's a really great example of a straightforward way to start using Simpler for chopping up a couple of other things. I'm going to pop over into the chat and see if anyone had existing questions. Hi to everyone who just joined in. Welcome. Great to see you. John, can Push 2 or any Ableton devices accept Rex files? Ooh, that's a good question. Not as far as I know, but maybe someone could corroborate that. I would love to check it out outside of this. I don't think so, because I think I did try before. I think the reason might be the best bet so far for Rex stuff. But yeah, that would be great. Enigmatic Onion, hi, how's it going? Great to see you again. Simpler is my most commonly used instrument. That's great to hear. I think Simpler is out of my, I would say I use Simpler more often than Sampler. Definitely when I first started, I looked at Sampler and I was a little bit intimidated, but now I do use Sampler quite a lot too. So I think, like I mentioned at the start of the stream, if you are just getting into the world of sampling, Simpler is an excellent way to kind of ease yourself in. And I guess as a funny anecdote of sorts, I don't know if anyone in attendance in this particular stream uses Logic, but if you do, like me, I use a couple of different DAWs. The most recent version of Logic has something that's called Quick Sampler, which is pretty much exactly the same as Simpler. So if you know how to use Simpler here, you'll know how to use Quick Sampler in Logic. Lucid, yeah, no problem. Great to see you. I think you also just popped in, which is great. But now you're leaving. That's all right. But thank you everyone for tuning in so far. If you do have questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. But let's go ahead and maybe try something else out with a different sort of loop. So I didn't get a suggestion in the chat from anyone, so maybe I'll find a different kind of loop, or I might record something in. This one's going to be difficult because there is going to be a lot of latency, but you know what? We're just going to go for it. It's going to be good stuff. So let me go ahead and close this up, and I'll unsolo this as well. You know, for now, let's mute these for now, and let's do a new audio track. But I'll set it up from Push so that we can record some audio in from my mic. It's going to be super latent, but we're going to make it work. just to put everyone on the same page, that tech issue that I was having earlier on, it's because my mixer isn't working. So I'm doing some fancy audio routing inside my computer right now. So let's load up a default track. Because of that, there's like a lot of latency. I can hear myself. There's at least half a second between the time I say something and the time I can hear it back. So I'm going to undo that because I accidentally hit a MIDI track instead. Let's pull up an audio track. So add audio track, default track. Yeah, cool. So now, once we're here, we're going to head over into mix view, but we're going to go into this track's specific mix view. And from there on push, we are able to choose the inputs and outputs. So now we can see, yes, great. I've selected it correctly. I am coming in on input 1. If I wasn't, I would be able to use the knobs again with their changing values to choose what I want it to be. So I can change it to input 2 on my interface or input 1. Of course, I would have to make sure that I have the right interface that's providing that input first, right? So I have my Apogee Duet connected. That's the usual interface that I use quite a lot in my streams, but also in my production stuff. So if you've ever seen me talk about interfaces or different kinds of hardware stuff, you'll hear me talk a lot about the Duet. I'm always like a big fan of it. But great. So now all set up for mix view. I'm going to head back into the main mix view, and then let's go into device view. And it might be nice to, let's think of something that I can maybe record over this. Maybe some kind of simple melody that we can start chopping up. So let's take a listen to this loop again. Cool. Well, I have an idea, but it's going to, I'm probably going to record it with my monitoring off first. And that means that you're not gonna hear me, but you'll hear the loop and you'll see the loop happening. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. Let's make sure that the track I want to record on is armed, and that way I'm gonna be able to listen back. Not listen back. I'm gonna be able to record into this without listening back. So I've got my monitoring set to off on this track. I've got my track record armed for audio. Let's go ahead and rename this before we forget. So I'll just call it Vocals In, and let's recolor this as well, color it green. Usually I think of vocals as being green, so that's always a really great, it's really great to have some kind of organization for yourself, so I highly recommend that. Great. So now I've got this set up. You can also see on push that I've armed the track. If you want to arm a track from push, you can always hold down on the track's name, and if it's armed, it will light up in pink. Yeah. So let's go ahead and record something. I am going to mute myself for this. So I'll see you, or you'll hear me in a couple of moments. Here we go. Let's mute and get going. Cool, there I am. Check that out. Cool, it's over here. That was what I just recorded in. And what I'm going to do now is unarm this track, but let's take a listen to what I recorded in, and we'll figure out some maybe interesting processing that we can do to it. So here we go. Cool. First order of business, I like what's coming in. I can also see it from push if I wanted to. I'm going to do a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do is just gain this up a little bit from push. There's a knob over here. Again, our fluid knobs that change their functions a lot. So I'm just going to bump up the gain a tiny bit. One thing I will also do, and this thing that could be useful if you want to do a very quick tidying up of different kinds of sounds, is I'm just going to quantize the audio directly from inside Live. So if I click inside the audio clip, and if I select everything by pressing Command A, I can then use Command U or Control U. So it's Command, anytime I say Command, it's on a Mac, and if I say Control, it's on a PC. So if I press Control A or Command A, I'm going to select all of these parts in this audio clip. And then Control U or Command U is going to quantize these based on a certain value that I have set. So I'm then going to maybe shift these around a tiny bit more, change the way that they're lining up with the markers over here and the grid lines. Okay, cool. That seems All right. So let's shift that there as well. And these seem good. Great. I'm also going to change the warp mode, which I can do from push. I'm going to change it to complex. So to put everyone on the same page without, again, going too in depth. Oftentimes, warp modes are well suited to a certain kind of material. So I like using complex or complex pro for vocals if you are changing the timing or if you're manipulating it in some kind of way. I usually like setting it to that. And now we're probably going to get some better timing. So let's also turn on the metronome and take a listen to what we got. Cool. So we got that. I'm going to maybe process this a little more and do it very quickly. I've talked about my vocal processing stuff in other streams too, which you can check out with the replays on our YouTube channel. But let's just throw an EQ and compressor on this. And let's do it very quickly. Great. Okay, that's where it's coming in. Let's decrease that over here. High pass a little more, I think. I would like to put a... Let's see. Let's put a chorus on this too. Here's a neat thing that I should mention also about Live 11. So for those of you who might have just joined us in our streaming trajectory, a few weeks ago, I did a welcome Live 11 sort of thing where I ran through the different new aspects of Live 11. One of them is that audio effects are organized into different categories. So now, if I want a chorus effect, I think that's probably going to be in pitch and modulation. And chorus in Live 11 has been reworked into chorus ensemble. So it's a different type of plugin slightly. I'm going to put it, let's put it before the EQ and compressor. And now if I play this back, the vocal loop that I recorded, it's going to be a little different. So you can hear that there's interesting stuff going on. Maybe we can also do some sends and returns, or we'll see. Great. Let's keep it as that for now. But we're going to do the same thing that I did just now. It would be nice to convert this. We're going to do this one twice, though. So first, let's not do it twice. Let's convert it. Instead of doing the simpler, this time, let's do a drum pad, which actually means to convert it to a drum rack. That said, though, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing a simpler first, but let's do drum pad because you can actually convert from a simpler to a drum rack. So let's pull that up. Haha, great. So now we got this new track over here. I'm going to go ahead and solo it. And what's going to happen instead is that when I'm dealing with all of these different parts, now I've put it instead in a drum rack. So I have the possibility of splitting each of these ones up into different parts and figuring out how I might want to organize them in a different way. That's one way that you can do it if you don't want to kind of split it up this way. Another way that could be useful, which I might do in this case, is I'm going to undo that. And there's another option in Live that lets you do something called slice to new MIDI track. So this is one of my favorite functions. If you've seen me present in Ableton user groups before, you'll know that this is one of my favorite functions because it does slicing on your behalf, which is pretty cool. So check this out. Let's see what we get from this one. I always get really excited about this effect. If I think just now Enigmatic Onion was mentioning that Simpler was their most favorite thing, this is my most favorite function within Simpler, so, involving Simpler or involving drum racks rather. So now I have this new track up over here, and let's see what happens if I press on each of these. Great, so I have all of these different parts, and they're each sliced up on their own. If I want to see the content of each slice, I can double click on any slice, and it will show up over here. So great. And if I hold it down, it loops, stuff like that. So this is usually how I do my vocal chopping stuff, if you've ever been curious or if you didn't manage to catch one of my previous streams. So now I have access to pretty much an entire new-ish bank of sounds. What I might do to this is actually, maybe I'll ask for some suggestions in the YouTube chat. If anyone has suggestions for audio effects that we can use since we've already sampled this, feel free to type it into the chat. I'm going to pull up some utilitarian things, so maybe my EQ and compression. Let's do that, and let's actually pull it from this one. So let's hold down the Option or Alt key, click and drag, and drop it onto the second track. Let's do the same maybe for the chorus. I thought that was kind of nice. So let's bring the chorus over here as well. Boop, there we go. Cool. So let me just adjust. See, that's like so, I love finding these like little more artifacty sorts of sounds. Yeah. Yeah, cool stuff. Okay. Really makes me happy. Great. We got, let's see. Ooh, cool. I noticed a couple of other comments coming in, so I'm just gonna take a minute to address them. Any Matty Onion, I'm looking forward to checking out Sampler when upgrade to standard from intro. That's great. I hope you manage to upgrade soon. Sampler is really fun. And by that I mean the actual sampler and not Simpler. It's one of my favorites as well. And yeah, slicing is how I use Simpler most of the time as well, but I guess it also depends on whether it's a Simpler within a drum rack or if it's just a normal Simpler. And this is maybe something interesting that I have mentioned before, but if you weren't sure, if you haven't noticed, the way a drum rack works is you have a Simpler in every drum pad. So every little drum pad is its own Simpler. That's why you have the options of classic and one shot and slice, and that's why you can do those conversion-y things that I was talking about just now. Because each of these is its own little Simpler. You can change its individual Simpler mode, like classic or one shot. Maybe you want one of these to be classic and you want another to be one shot. You can totally do that. Maybe we can do that right over here. Like this first one, I like it in classic. But this one, I think it might be nice to put it in one shot mode. So let's put it in one shot mode. And this way, I can just hold it down. And I'm also going to change its end length. So now I can play a little bit with that. This one's pretty nice too. I think this one could also be in one shot mode. So let's do one shot. So now I have these two as one shots, and this one is kind of a classic mode thing. And because of that, I might also recolor these. So now we're kind of, I guess, coming back over onto this side of things. We've got a really nice drum rack here with some good ideas, but it might be nice to have a little more organization. So one part I love about Push and about doing all the sampling for Push 2 is that you can change the colors of individual pads to guide you a little bit. So I usually like color coding my pads in different ways. You might have remembered this from our drums from last week. We had all of these different colors on as well. And let me just adjust the lighting a little bit. Let's see if we can get that a little better. Okay. So yeah, I have all these different colors. Let's head back over here. I think for this special one, let's make it, let's hold down Shift, tap on it, and let's make it, let's see what color looks good. Let's make it this one. It's like a bluish type of thing. Great. So now my one shots are all kind of in blue in a way. And yeah, I can think about how I might want to reuse these. I'm going to go ahead and delete the existing clip that I have in that. Whenever you slice something to a new MIDI track, it automatically creates a new clip for you with the slices. So you can kind of get rid of that if you want to start from scratch. But yes, I also did see that we had a suggestion for a flanger in the chat. So thank you for that suggestion. Interestingly enough, the flanger is also one of those other devices that is no longer its own thing in Live 11. It's been merged with the phaser flanger, which is what we see over here. So let's go ahead and maybe we'll substitute that out for the chorus. So I'm just going to put that over here. We'll use our phaser flanger instead. Let's take away the chorus ensemble, although I do think it might be nice to maybe use our send and return friends to add a little bit of reverb and delay to this. So let's try that out. Cool. Got some other options. Let's see what else we have that might be interesting. This one's pretty cool too. And I think I might like this as a one shot as well. So let's change the colors of the one shots too, so we know what we've done to them. Let's make them this pink. Great. So anything that is blue is classic. Anything that's pink is a one shot. Let's find some other sounds that we like. This one might be nice as a one shot too. So let's go ahead and change this. Let me just go into device view, make sure we're at the right part. Okay, cool. This should be a one shot. This should also be a one shot. Great. And I think let's see, compress this a bit more. Let me just check where that's coming in. Oh, that's all right, actually. We can make the volume a little louder. Cool. So we've got some new options now. Let me just hit back over here. Change a couple of these settings. Great. So now you can also see another thing that I did forget to mention is that the moment you color something on push, it does get automatically reflected in the push display as well. So now you can see that my pad for this particular drum pad is a pink simpler. So yay. Unfortunately, this is something that does not show up in live. So it's one of my features I wish could happen. Because check this out. If I hit back over here into the drum rack, they're all still the same color. So I wish we could change, the colors of the pads inside over here. Maybe live 12 will do that, maybe. So that might be interesting to think about as well. We had a question from, hi Tyra, how's it going? Yeah, great to see you at the New Orleans user group too. I spoke about that briefly, but I like going around to other folks' user groups as well. It's great to see you. And the New Orleans user group was really fun. There was a couple of really great presentations from the Ableton Certified Trainers over there talking about Live 11, so that was really fun as well. Yay, great to see you. Paul, can you use push step sequencer function to create a novel sound pattern? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by novel sound pattern. You can create a new arrangement for sure. You can create a new loop. Maybe we can try that out. So if I want to maybe use a couple of these, let's maybe put it in over here. Great. Yeah, you absolutely can. So let's try this one. Let's figure out a good place for the oaks. So you absolutely can do that. Novel sound pattern is I've never heard of that phrase before. So again, not super sure what that means, but you can absolutely, once you have the drum rack, treat it pretty much like any other drum rack that you have. If you remember, the way that we would sequence drums is in a couple of ways. You could either record it in as a loop using the record button, or you could use the step sequencer section on top to control the different parts. And I think last week we came up with a 4-bar loop. That's why we see it reflected over here in the loop selector section for the drums. And right now on the vocal chop track, we just have a 2-bar loop. So that's why we see these over here. But yes, you absolutely can create new patterns once you have stuff. So let's go ahead and maybe add in this other one that I thought was kind of funny. Or maybe this other one might be cool. Let's try this. Great. So we have some different options. Slightly pitchy, but that's okay. We're rolling today, so we'll keep going. And now let's listen to everything in context. So what I'm gonna do is unsolo this track. I could also unsolo it from push. Let's listen back to how all of these sound. And what I'm gonna do is bring the volume of the vocals all the way down for now. I'll do the same thing with my original track. In fact, the original one, we don't need it, so let's mute it. I'll launch the entire scene, and then I'll bring up the volume of this vocal track so that we can find a good place for it. So here we go. Turn off the metronome. Cool, great. And there's pretty much our loop. One thing that we can do, which is, as a quick reminder, maybe is also a little related to sampling techniques in general, is that when we sample something, we do have the ability to change how high or how low something is. So what I'm going to do in this case is head back over to my vocals, and I think for that second oh that was repeated, let's make it a different pitch. So this is currently what we have. Great. And this is the one that I wanted to change. So because it sounds a little similar to the first one that we had. So this one. So let's change this one by moving its transposition. Let us maybe bring it up 2, or let's do this on the fly. So you can listen now. Now we're 12 semitones up. I think 3 was actually kind of nice, so cool. Let's listen in context. Cool. So I just used the step sequencer again to actually add one more of the blue classic mode thing that we did just now. So great. Now we have all of these different ideas. If I want to take a look at exactly what is in the clip as far as MIDI notes go, I can always go into clip view and see that there are my clips, and my notes are also showing up in the same colors. Again, unfortunately, that's not something that's reflected in live, which is kind of sad, but that's all right. And yeah, let's take a second to maybe speak a little bit about the idea of sampling. Maybe just take a little bit more of a generalized idea of it. Like, when should you sample something and when should you not? This is something that I often get asked by my students, or when's a good time to use sampler? I think anytime is a good time to use sampler, honestly. And again, this kind of goes back a little to my initial the initial thing that I mentioned just now about how simpler, especially, is a really great way to get into it. And if you happen to own Push and you want to get more into sampling, you can totally do that very easily. So one of my favorite parts about Push to that end. I think something that might be interesting for people to consider also is that when you are, say, maybe thinking of new ideas and when you're recording them, being able to chop your own stuff up and sample yourself is really great too. There is a wonderful video on Ableton's YouTube channel that is called a wonderful video series, actually. It's called One Thing. And one of the really great one things that's one of my favorites has to do with re-sampling yourself in a way. And it's done by the very amazing Ben Casey. So if you know Ben Casey, give some claps for Ben in the chat. Ben's another Ableton Certified Trainer too, but he also works for Ableton, and he presented at the Ableton user group that we hosted in November, which was doing like what's new in Live 11. So Ben helped us a lot with that. And yeah, if you want to think about the different ways to get creative with sampling, that One Thing video series is really great. So Ben does that. I think there's a couple of other people who talk about sampling related techniques, like sampling ambient sounds and then tuning the ambient sounds, or sampling your friends and then using your friends' voices if they give you permission. If they don't, then please don't do that. It's always important to get permission. And even sampling other things like nature sounds. So we often call that using found sounds, or you could even just use field recordings to do that. That's another way that people say that. You could use your phone really to record out there in the world. So like if I'm using my phone if I'm traveling or anything, what I often do, which you're not obligated to, but this is a little bit of, I guess, a weird thing that I do. Sometimes I just record the ambience of random places. So let's say I'm walking through a mall or something. I just record that mall and I end up using it in my music as an interesting type of background noise. So you'll end up getting this like collection of different places that you use in your own music too. So that's something really cool to consider, maybe, that you might want to think about and to look into if you're interested in any of that. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know in the chat. And let's see. Cool. Do we have anything? Cool. Paul, yeah, thank you for clarifying that loop. Carlos, the transmission looks glitchy. Oh, okay. Whoops. Sorry that it's looking glitchy. It might be because of that routing issue that I had to do at the beginning of the stream. But it looks okay from my end, so I'm not super sure. But anyway, that's a little bit of like an intro to simpler and sampling. I did want to mention one more time that, let me scroll all the way to the top. Yes, this week we still have a giveaway, everyone. So thank you all for tuning in. Yay, giveaways. The giveaway that we have this week is from Splice. We know that these Splice folks are our dear friends, and if you've tuned into our other streams before, you will have seen us talk about really cool stuff that Splice is doing. So this week we have, what do we have? Oh, whoops. I need to keep scrolling past that. Great. We have a 4-month subscription for Splice. So if you want to enter the giveaway, scroll up in the chat on YouTube and you will be able to see what's going on in the giveaway stuff. We have more info there for you. And the more that you tune in to 343 TV, the more eligible you will be to enter the giveaway. So make sure that you enter the giveaway and have a chance in winning. We want you to win. We want you to enter the giveaway. So make sure that you enter the giveaway, please. In the meantime, though, I do also want to mention a big thank you to everyone who's been tuning into season 2 of 343 TV. We will be taking a short break for December, but partially in honor of that and also partially because I like to kind of end things on a good note. Next week is going to be the last 343 TV stream for season 2. And because of that, I'll be doing a write-in show. So if you want to bring questions next week and ask them, you are more than welcome to. So you can please bring your questions in next week and leave them in the chat. It's pretty much, I guess it's a little bit like an AMA, although I'm not personally on Reddit, so I don't necessarily know how this goes, but but from my general understanding is that you ask questions and people answer them. So that's what we're going to try to do. So yeah, next week, bring your questions. We'll do a dolltr write-in show, or Claire write-in show rather, not so much dolltr. We'll see if she comes. If she comes, that'll be great. If she doesn't, that's fine. But that's all right. Oh, Enigmatic Onion. What do you use to record sounds when you're on the go? Yeah, so like I mentioned, I just use my phone. I have an iPhone, so the recent. It's not an iPhone 12, which is the most recent one, but from a couple generations ago, I have my iPhone. So I just use that to record whenever I'm on the go. But yeah, that's an example of a question that could be really good to ask next week. So please bring that in and bring in any other thoughts that you have for Claire or for 343 Labs. Once again, 343 Labs, we're based in Berlin and New York and online. And if you head over to our website, 343labs.com, you can sign up for our classes. We have lots of really exciting classes coming up, lots of really cool events. We have a Discord server now. Yay, Discord, which a few people in the chat are already there as well, and they've joined us there. If you want to join us, please do. I'm not sure if maybe if Thomas or someone from the 343 Labs team could put the link for our Discord in the chat. But yeah, you can join us over there in Discord, and you can have some fun times with us and be able to join us for more chit chat and joining and connecting with the rest of the community over there. But in the meantime, thank you again, everyone, for your patience with the tech stuff today. I'll look into the strange things that we've been experiencing. Hopefully nothing too crazy, hopefully. And yeah, we will see all of you next week. Thanks again for this great stream. Great to see everyone. Hope you have a great rest of the week. And stay tuned for tomorrow. We have, again, TAETRO Talks with our dear friend TAETRO, our creative director at 343. So we hope to see you again then. And don't forget to enter the giveaway. In the meantime, this has been Claire, and I'll see you soon. Bye.